A common argument put forth by the so-called traditionalists is the argument that the new Mass, Novus Ordo Missae, was influenced by Protestantism. My future debating opponent, Ken Bird, has made the same errors that his comrades make. And this video will be a general video on this topic, not just a response to the errors of Ken Bird. We hear that Protestants influence the new Mass, and it therefore has Protestantism bleeding from its pores. First things off, there indeed were observers at the sessions in 1963 that were Protestant. Yet these individuals had no influence or say in the revisions done to the Mass of the Roman Rite. There is no proof for this. The Sedevacantist can quote thousands of people, millions if they want, that say that Protestants influenced the Novus Ordo. It is untrue. It's completely untrue. And it would make no difference if they quoted 1 million people. We're now going to examine what the Catholic Church herself has said about the new Mass to see how illogical this argument is. If we look over the new order of the Roman Missal and we take into consideration what the Sacred Congregation for Divine Worship has said on this subject, we can see that there is no basis for such empty claims. The Catholic Church herself has told us the official definition of the new Mass. Hence the Mass, the Lord's Supper, is at the same time and inseparably 1. A sacrifice in which the sacrifice of the cross is perpetuated. 2. A memorial of the death and resurrection of the Lord, who said, "Do this in memory of me," Luke 22:19. 3. A sacred banquet in which, through the communion of the body and blood of the Lord, the people of God share the benefits of the paschal sacrifice, renew the covenant which God has made with man once for all through the blood of Christ, and in faith and hope foreshadow and anticipate the eschatological banquet in the kingdom of the Father, proclaiming the Lord's death until his coming. We will examine these 3 points put forth by the Catholic Church and see if these 3 highlights of the ordinary rite of Mass have Protestant influence within them. This is a key point in diffusing the outlandish arguments that the new Mass has been Protestantized. 1. In Protestantism, we find the fact that the Eucharist is a sacrifice that perpetuates the cross as blasphemous. Protestantism, particularly the Reformed branches, view such a teaching as alien to the Scriptures. It is John Calvin and Martin Luther and even Cranmer that spoke out against such teachings, which brings in the oft-used passage that Protestants use with the employment of the Greek term tetelestai, in reference to the lack of necessary propitiation after the sacrifice of the cross. If the so-called traditionalist premise is to be true, we need them to answer how the historical usage of tetelestai within the realm of Protestantism is not violated by point number 1 of the Catholic Church. Let me put this in simpler terms so the Sedevacantists can understand. Historical Protestantism, historical Reformed Protestantism, has always used the passage which uses the term tetelestai of Christ in John, the Gospel of John, as being a passage that would negate the necessity of a perpetual sacrifice, a representation of a sacrifice at least. And as such, this would, in the realm of Protestantism, verse 1, point 1 of the Catholic Church would therefore be not acceptable, in other words. And I need an answer. Catholics need an answer as to how the Mass was Protestantized if point number 1 directly violates the usage of tetelestai in the realm of Protestant theology. Point number 2, the Church comments on, and the real death blow to this fallacious argument. The Church calls the new Mass what the Church has always called the Eucharist, a memorial, as evinced in Luke 22:19. And if we examine Luke 22:19, we realize just why the Lord's Supper is called a memorial, and just why this passage is invoked. A brief look-see of this passage of Luke 22:19 and point number 2 brings forth the Greek terms poieo and anamnesis. In this passage, poiete, from the Greek word poieo, is employed. And then we find the Greek construct that leads us to the all-important term anamnesin, from the Greek word anamnesis. The Catholic Church, in its official explanation of the new Mass, specifically leads us to the passage which shows us that the Mass is a real sacrifice. The Greek term anamnesis and the Greek poieo are used in sacrificial contexts. The specific usage of anamnesis throughout the Septuagint in the New Testament is always used in reference to a real sacrifice. In other words, the Council is telling us just what the new Mass is. It's what the Church has always said it was going to be. If we would find Protestant influence in the workings of the Novus Ordo Missae, it is highly suspect that the Council would hearken to a passage that is interpreted completely differently within the world of Protestantism. In fact, it is this very passage that Reformed Protestantism has trouble answering, and this is the very passage that Trent formally defined as a true Eucharistic passage and as an invocation of holy orders. In other words, the post-Vatican II Church, in its official declarations, is describing the Mass as it was described back at Trent. Point number 3 need only be examined briefly to see that Protestantism believes in a koinonia of the Lord's body and blood in a spiritual, figurative type of way, not in the sense that point 3 puts forth. So as we can see clearly, the Novus Ordo Missae harkens back to Trent. At Trent, the documents in regards to the Mass were completely opposed by Protestantism. In fact, in the foreword to the general instruction of the Roman Missal, we read that the Novus Ordo Missae is a sacrifice of praise, propitiation, thanksgiving, and satisfaction. Hence the Greek term Eucharistia. Such comments are viewed as blasphemous by Protestants within the realm of their certain faiths. The Mass is not a sacrifice which propitiates our sins in the realm of Protestantism. That is something utterly alien to Protestant theology. It is of even greater interest that former staunch Protestant Calvinist Max Thurian affirmed that, in the Novus Ordo Missae, nothing has been changed with respect to traditional Catholic doctrine concerning the Eucharistic sacrifice. Thurian was aware of Reformed Protestantism and its view on the Lord's Supper and the Eucharist, and he quite plainly rejected it. Thurian would later abandon Protestantism and become Catholic, embracing the Catholic view of the Eucharist. If the logical conclude of the Sedevacantist was valid, Max would have no reason to abandon Protestantism as flawed and embrace the anamnesis within Catholicism. It is a historical fact that those in charge of revising the Roman Missal were all Catholics. Not Protestants, all Catholics. Here are a few names of experts in regards to Catholic doctrine, the historical Mass, and the liturgy. You will see some very renowned scholars appear here. J. Wagner, director of the Liturgical Institute of Trier. Joseph A. Youngman, yes, Youngman, whose authoritative books in the Mass have been several times used by the Church. An author, that is correct, an author whose famous works on the Roman Rite have been in usage by the Church since before Vatican II. That is right, Youngman, an expert on the liturgy, an expert on the Mass, is listed here. C. Vagaggini, T. Schnitzler, and a few others as well. No Protestants had a say in the construct of the Novus Ordo Missae. I have studied the faith of the 6 Protestants invited to observe the sessions, and there is no way on earth they would have agreed with the formulations officially put forth by the Church. It is unfortunate that we keep hearing this argument over and over from the so-called traditionalists. It is those that have little knowledge and the historical teachings of the Church, on the strong emphasis of the Catholic Scriptures in their original language in these formulations, and a sense of confusion and adoption of these outlandish beliefs, simply leads us to say that we really hope that a deeper examination can be made. Before these individuals adopt these weak and ridiculous arguments, they should read what the Catholic Church has said. They should read what the Church has said about the Mass. A mere memorial? Of course the Mass is a memorial. That is what the Greek term anamnesis is. Of course it's a memorial. If you want to say a mere memorial, fine, we'll say a mere memorial, but the term is loaded. The biblical Greek is loaded with sacrificial overtones. Sure, it's a mere memorial, but it carries way more than just that when we put the term memorial on it. We need answers to these terms. We need to know why the Church called the Mass an anamnesis if it was Protestantized. I dare say we will have no decent answer. God bless you.